The rabbis saw their Hellenized foreskins and were outraged and said...
And I'm curious as to how that actually happened.
Yeah. So they instituted this requirement that you had to rip the glands, the foreskin and the glands apart, and basically make it a much more severe procedure than it was originally.
Yeah. So I'm imagining they'd like, get a T-shirt. I went to Greece and all I got was an elongated foreskin.
Yeah, there you go.
And this T-shirt. But, actually, we've got one caller on
okay.
who I think has something quick, and I don't want to have him hold forever. So if we can, you there, Alan?
Yes, I'm here.
You had something for us?
Yeah. I have proof that only atheists get to go to heaven.
Really? What is it?
Yeah. Well, the old past gods before Jesus, they have like similar stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the birth and all that, virgin birth and all that good stuff. Well, Christians will say that the devil went back in time and actually created these old gods to test the faith, to test our faith.
If you're listening to your TV, turn it down. There's a delay, so just use the phone.
No, it might just be an echo. But I believe that he didn't stop there. He also created the Holy Bible itself.
Ah.
See, but now he's able to take a vacation from it because he gets most everybody to believe in it. He makes it pretty obvious too. The stoning your rebellious children.
Yeah, you'd think anybody could figure it out.
Yeah, kill people just because of their sex life, cutting off women's hands for breaking up a fight. It's like in the story of Adam and Eve. The apple is actually the Bible, and if you eat the fruit, you go to hell.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the test in the life.
Well, that's an interesting theory. I think we'll have to toss that around and see if maybe we can get some theologians to call in and comment on it.
Right.
Thanks a lot, Alan. I want to get back to this so we can get this knocked out. I just didn't want you to have to wait on hold forever. So.
Okay, that's fine.
Appreciate the call.
All right, thank you.
So, yeah, the number's up on your screen. Feel free to call in to talk about this topic or anything else you might want to talk about. We've got quite a bit more to cover, and we'll try and get some calls in between, but I want to make sure we get this topic covered well and give Jen the time since she was nice enough to come on today. So please continue.
Okay. Well, next I want to talk a little bit about Muslim traditions, because Muslims actually, when we think about circumcision, we typically think about Jewish males being circumcised, but in fact Muslims make up the largest number of circumcised males in the world. And there's actually nothing in the Quran that requires circumcision. So this is not one of the 5 pillars of faith or anything. There was just a reference in one passage in the Quran that talked about Abraham being a worthy man, and that Muhammad was supposed to be like Abraham. And Abraham, of course, was circumcised as a very old man, so they took that, I think, to the extreme. But there are, among the Muslim customs, there's the fitrah, which has to do with standards of personal hygiene. And so there are 5 parts of that. It includes shaving pubic hair, circumcision, mustache trimming, plucking armpit hair, and nail trimming. So it's just basic personal hygiene. Somehow circumcision got wrapped into that. As far as what it says about female circumcision, and I use that term to mean any kind of female genital cutting. So for those people who are saying, "Oh, you're trivializing, what's done to women,"
yeah.
I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying that I'm using that term to refer to any kind of genital cutting. What it says about female circumcision is that it's an honorable thing to do, but not a requirement. So there is no religious requirement in Islam for a woman to be circumcised, but it's considered honorable to do.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. I mean, a couple of years ago, and I still have the notes from the show that I did back then, I talked about this kind of in passing, about how the Bible, it seems to be completely obsessed with circumcision and foreskin, especially in the Old Testament. And I've literally got everything that's on this page is just shorthand for verses, maybe 15 or 20 in Genesis, a handful in Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, James. I mean, it's New Testament and Old, with all this obsession about circumcision and foreskins. And you have the same thing. Here you have Muslim culture with their pillars of faith, where their God, for all practical purposes, is concerned with trimming your fingernails. And there may be good advice in there, but is this really the sort of thing that we need divine revelation on?
Yeah.
and yet they're also promoting things like female genital mutilation, which is, I'm fine with addressing a circumcision as cutting in those circumstances as well, but I mean, we might as well call it what it is.
Yes.
I mean, if there is any medical data that shows that there's some positive benefit to male circumcision, and there may well be, that still isn't a justification for routine infant circumcision, there is zip on this issue of female genital mutilation, female circumcision, whatever you want to call it. And oddly enough, we live in a time where, I mean, just this past week, I think, the parliament in Yemen voted against a bill that would have outlawed female genital mutilation. And this is believed to affect nearly 25% of Yemeni women. And the reason that was the issue's too sensitive. We can't get a religious consensus, so we're not going to make a law.
Yeah.
I'm a huge supporter of religious freedom, the right of every individual to follow the dictates of their conscience until that right affects others. That's the limit. My rights end where your rights begin. You're free to believe whatever you want, practice whatever you want. If you, as an individual, want to mutilate your own genitals, feel free. I'd rather you seek counseling because I think you're probably doing harm to yourself for really bad reasons. But I'll give you that right. I'll support your right to be as foolish as you want about anything like this. But in this modern era, and I realize we're talking about Yemen and not necessarily one of the pinnacles of human rights, it's insane to me to think that we're not going to provide a law that protects the rights of human beings because we can't get religious folks on board with it. That's the world we live in. Yes. And while we as Americans might look at that and say, oh, that's some, little third world pissant country that they're so backwards and they've got these silly religions. No, it's the same here. It may not have the same impact. It may not be as impactful at kind of a visceral level as something like female genital mutilation. But religion steps in the way of protecting people's rights in America as well. And when we're talking about this issue of male circumcision, and I know you're going to get to this, it's really, even I wasn't opposed to it. I grew up, I was a Christian, it was normal. I didn't think about it. I don't look at myself as, I don't consider myself to be a victim. I don't look at myself as mutilated. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody were to come up today and say, and we'd never had circumcision of any kind before, and say, hey, look, I've done a bunch of research here, and I'm pretty sure that if we just trim off the foreskin on men's penises, we might see a whole bunch of positive health benefits. What would happen? Well, we'd do some research. We'd investigate it like we would with any other scientific idea. I mean, after all, we remove people's tonsils and appendixes, but not until they're causing a problem. Yeah. But we'd take a look at it. And then what would happen? People would be provided with medical information and be able to make an informed decision. Nobody, if this hadn't already happened, if this hadn't been a tradition throughout the centuries, nobody would suggest, in any rational sense, that we begin routinely circumcising every male that's born.
Yes, and in fact, that was one of the justifications that early Jewish philosophers used for doing it to an 8-day-old infant, aside from the fact that, God told Abraham to do it, was that if you waited until later, as most of the desert tribes around there did, it was a puberty rite or a coming of age rite. If you wait until later, the man might